Hi guys, Emma here. I'm making a video today for y'all about long-term recovery from meth. This is going to be about, different things that you can expect when you get off meth. And, the experience of recovery and, the timeline of recovery looks different for everybody, but it's pretty well known that meth is, one of the most damaging drugs that there is to your brain, and that it is the drug it takes the longest to recover from. So I'm going to share, my personal experience and insight, as well as, just general things that I've seen in other people, what I've learned. And the general message is that there is hope. You're not doomed to be forever acting like a tweaker. However, it really does vary for people. I have seen people that don't fully come back to their old self, which is incredibly sad. It really depends on the length of use, as well as, pre-existing mental health conditions. So one of the most damaging part about meth probably is that, you don't sleep, right? Sleep is incredibly important. It's more important than I ever knew. Obviously everybody knows you sleep. Naturally, when you are not using drugs, your body has, the natural inclination to sleep. You can't just be like, I don't feel like sleeping. And sleeping is what allows your brain to literally repair itself overnight, like to process the memory, the information that you've taken in throughout the day. Like, what things do I need to store in my memory? What things can just get, tossed away, essentially. Sleep literally repairs your brain and is 1000% essential to human function, survival, all of it. As a drug user, and stimulants have always been my drug of choice. I have always wanted the go. I never wanted to be, I didn't like depressants at all, because I didn't want to be, numbed out and just, sitting there, laying there. I wanted to be up. Like, I didn't want to sleep. And as a matter of fact, the more that I did Adderall and meth, I became very afraid of sleep. I didn't want to sleep. I felt like I was going to be missing out on something, which is funny because everyone in the world is asleep. You're not missing out on anything. But I had that fear. Sleep truly felt like it was necessary to me, right? So your body wants that sleep back. The sleep that you steal from your body with drugs, your body wants it back, and it's going to get it back eventually, one way or the other. So this damages the brain extremely. And this is why I believe they found about half of people that are addicted to meth will end up experiencing psychosis, which psychosis is delusions, paranoia, and hallucinations. A very common hallucination that I feel like even myself that I had, that most people have, is shadow people, which is just, it's, flashes of black blobs essentially that you see out of the corner of your eye, or you think you see one darting across your line of view when you've been awake for too long. That is just your brain becomes unable to function, which is why I have very little memories of large periods of time, because your brain isn't able to store memories at that point. So memory loss is extremely common with meth. But psychosis itself, that happens for about half of people that use meth. That is something that continues on and on for a period of time. And then for some people, that doesn't end when they get clean for a long time. Requires a lot of other intervention to get that person stabilized again, because it's essentially the exact same thing as paranoid schizophrenia. It's drug induced, but it really looks the exact same way. This is why you hear so many people that use meth talk about, they think that the cops are watching them outside in the bushes, or like this, a lot of it revolves around people watching them. There being a plot to harm you. Thinking that you're being watched, like cameras in the walls, cameras in the vents. It's fascinating to me how, I've heard stories of psychosis from a great deal of people that are in recovery from meth, and the delusions are often incredibly similar, which is just, it's very interesting how the brain works in that way. I was fortunate to not experience this. Psychosis comes from there being too much dopamine, and meth blocks the reuptake of dopamine. Way more, I forget the number. I think it's hundreds of times more than any other drug. When you look at like drugs in general and how much dopamine is released, like cocaine is here and meth is all the way up here. So the brain just has too much dopamine. That, also is why you don't sleep, and that combination leads to psychosis. An interesting thing though is I naturally have less dopamine because I have ADHD, so I never experienced psychosis. I definitely was a million times more anxious, and so as a result experienced some paranoia, like I didn't want to go outside ever, and I couldn't interact with other people, but I didn't have like these delusions that are larger than just this anxiety. So it takes a long time for the brain to repair itself. Oftentimes that requires medication, sometimes like antipsychotics. I think medication for people that are in recovery is very common, and that definitely should not be shamed or stigmatized. It's very important. I myself take a lot of medications to help stabilize, your neurochemistry. But it really does take time, and the length of use definitely plays a role. But I feel like genetics and pre-existing mental health conditions play a big role also in a person's time of healing. What's really difficult is that, the meth-induced psychosis can really ignite mental health conditions that may have been under the surface but weren't really, active and showing up in your life. And then after meth, they've been released, so paranoia and things like that is really common in early recovery from meth, just because, again, it erodes your brain. Your brain is never supposed to have that much dopamine. There is no naturally occurring experience in one's life, even the most incredible, amazing, joyful experiences, where your brain would ever naturally release that much dopamine. It's just not realistic. And, the longer that you use meth, like with any drug, you get a tolerance, and it really erodes your brain. And, you're not feeling any of that massive rush that you used to feel. So an interesting thing I wanted to share is I was talking about being afraid of sleep. Most people that I knew around me stayed up for considerable lengths of time with meth. As I said, I naturally have less dopamine in my brain. I always have. I've got ADHD. So I couldn't stay up that long, and in the end, it ended up becoming a massive issue. I was doing very large amounts of meth, which is why I literally had a heart attack, because I was doing so much that my heart gave out. Even with doing that level of meth, I could not stay up for a full 48 hours. For the last 4 months that I was doing meth, I would fall asleep, but I wouldn't. When I'm talking about fall asleep, I would become essentially unconscious. And I would never be laying down in bed. I would almost always be sitting at my desk, fiddling with art in some way. So I would always be sitting up. I would never be intentionally, I didn't want to fall asleep. I was afraid to sleep, didn't want it. And I would literally just, essentially like I had just been shot and I just went down. Like that would be what I did. So I would be sitting at the desk and I would just go like, and smash my face. Like I had probably a broken nose too. I had bruises all over my face. Got, the police called, thought it was domestic violence. Like, big problem, right? The police were called numerous times because, there were so many times where people thought that I was, overdosed on fentanyl when really I was just asleep. But, I wasn't responding to any kind of verbal commands. It would take a lot to get me awake. But so I was almost Narcan numerous times, and I would be like, geez, I was just asleep. Like, come on. So when I say your body wants your sleep back, your body wants the sleep back. And in the end, it was just like, there was nothing I could do, it was just downhill from there, right? So early recovery from meth, as I've talked about a good bit on this channel, for me, the most difficult component of it was the massive fatigue, because it really does take time for your brain to heal. And so when you get off meth, you're going to be exhausted. For me, it just helped to accept, quite literally, like, I'm going to need more sleep than I have ever needed before in my life. It's gonna feel like, oh, I'm just lazy and piece of shit. But I had to constantly go back and try to change that narrative to preserve my recovery and to understand that I have to accept this, as difficult as it was, because, honestly, in the beginning, it was like I needed an extreme amount of sleep. Like I needed about 16 hours of sleep a day in the beginning, but I couldn't get 16 hours of sleep because I was in treatment, and then, when I moved into sober living, I immediately had to get a job because I had to pay my rent and for everything in my life. And I was in IOP, and I immediately started working full time, and I didn't have a car to get around. And I was exhausted. When I would get home from work, I would literally collapse, with my shoes on, fully clothed, and just pass out. It was really one of the hardest times of my life. I just felt like I drank about 6 energy drinks a day while I was at work. And I remember my coworkers were concerned. And I would just be like, do you understand how much meth? They understood, I'm in recovery. And do you understand how much meth I was doing? I just need to keep my eyes open, was how I felt. But the cool thing is that got better. It did not remain that intense level of fatigue. I want to say it was 90 days of really, really, really hard fatigue. And at that time, I definitely had, of course, I had an increase in ADHD symptoms, right? Because of the dopamine. So it was more difficult for me to, keep track of anything, really, to process information and remember it. I definitely couldn't, read or, sit still to focus on one thing. And also, I would fall asleep, when I was sitting still for any period of time. It was very hard. At that point, though, I was, I had resisted against that because I knew that coming off meth was going to feel like shit, and it was going to feel like shit for a while. However, it wasn't as bad as I imagined it in my head still. I imagined it as being death, the worst thing. But I finally understood that if I kept doing meth, I was going to die alone in an apartment by myself at age 24. 23. all alone by myself, not having accomplished any of the things that I wanted to accomplish in life. You know, my family would have to bury me and grave me for the rest of it. I mean, it just, I just didn't want that, of course. That was so scary. I was willing to do anything to avoid that, which helped me get through this long process. Now that I've been off meth for a year, I have seen a dramatic increase. I'm definitely still not completely back to normal, I would say, but I feel about as close to that. I feel the most normal I've ever felt my entire life. That's the thing. Like, I have always struggled so much in life and had a lot of dysfunction that I feel like this is the most functional and healthy overall that I've ever been. Meaning that, like, my routines have changed a lot. Like, I have a great sleep schedule. I definitely appreciate sleep. That's the thing. Like, the thing I was most afraid of now, I appreciate, and I'm like, I need my sleep. I need a sufficient amount of sleep. But the cool thing is now I can get 8 hours of sleep without, I don't need 12 plus hours of sleep now, but it just took a long time to get there. And I mean, I took naps almost every day, you know, if I could, for a long time once I got clean. But now I have a consistent sleep schedule. Like, I work out 4 to 5 times a week. I go outside, like, get sunshine and exercise as well. I eat healthy. I mean, I still consume sugar, but I eat healthy overall for sure. And I've, like, you know, I've been vegan for a very long time. And for a long time, I really didn't pay attention to my diet, you know, getting enough protein mostly. So I make sure to get enough protein and, you know, B12, calcium, things like that that are harder to get as a vegan, prioritizing that. I mean, I work a full-time job that is, you know, consistent, reliable, there's structure in my life. I have a recovery network that helped me through all of life's challenges because life has continued to be extremely challenging. But all those things I think contribute to why I've been feeling so stable. An interesting thing for me, I'm fortunate to again not have had any of the psychotic related symptoms that I've seen a lot of people really struggle with meth. You know, if that's something you're personally experiencing, I mean, just it's incredibly hard. I don't have the personal experience with it, you know, through my own shoes, but you know, I hope that you're able to get the help you need to get through it, and you know, because I know it's possible. It's just very, very challenging. For me, I've experienced interesting new sensory issues since meth that I didn't used to have, particularly to noises. They sound amplified, and I mean, it drove me mad. Like, a variety of sounds, like, would be so loud that I just could not tune them out. And I mean, I'm talking, you know, nonstop throughout the day, to the point where I was feeling literally insane. And, you know, my whole life, I've always been the person that could just tune out sounds. Like, it was part of, like, you know, I considered it to be kind of a cool thing with ADHD was that, you know, I would obviously miss a lot of things by tuning stuff out, but I also could tune things out that I didn't want to hear. And I can't do that anymore at all. And I mean, that was a big challenge for me. So now I have earplugs that I wear a lot and have like a white noise machine and really good noise canceling headphones that I wear honestly like 50% of the time. I mean, not at work, but like, you know, even now, not living in sober living. In sober living, I wore headphones 100% of the time, pretty much, except for when we were having a meeting or something. But because I just couldn't take the sounds. So that was a new thing that developed for me after meth. But I mean, I still really can't read. So there's been some, I guess, regression because a lot of the things I've originally struggled with ADHD that I ended up improving in have kind of gone back to not being things have strength at, but it's okay because overall I've cultivated ways to be a fully functional human that is on top of things, and that you know, it's taken me a lot of practice. Like, having a full-time job that involves a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of me forgetting things, you know, but yeah, it's just been a process. But the cool thing is, you know, my vision of getting clean after meth was that I was going to be what they call perma-twacked. Like you're just like a zombie, like not a human anymore, not yourself. And I feel very fortunate that, you know, I am me today. I'm more me than I honestly ever was before in my life. And, you know, I know there's still brain healing to be done. They say it takes approximately 2 years. You know, and I was using Adderall for longer than I used meth as well. So, you know, it's taken time, but for the most part now, I'm really the healthiest I've ever been overall. So it's, there is hope. Please let me know if you have any questions, things that you want me to talk about. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'm trying to make more content for y'all and to be more consistent. Let me know if you like it. If you don't, all the things. And I will see you next time. Bye.